right, fourth grade, we're here for the last chapter of There's an Owl in the Shower, chapter 17. Here we go. The Nobleman. Leon led them away through the forest. Want to see a nobleman? He called. I guess so, Borden answered. I'd like to see it, Sally said, eager to do something else before she cried. What is it? Asked Borden. A Douglas fir, Leon answered. Oh, said Sally, surprised to hear the affectionate note in her father's voice. You're going to show us a big tree? Leon put his arms around their shoulders and led the two spotted owlet lovers along the ridge, then down a steep ravine. He took them down the slope past Barty's nest tree and dense rhododendron groves. He took them through purple-blue shadows and under mammoth trees where sword fern communities grew 8 feet tall. Near the bottom of the ravine, he pushed back a big leaf maple branch, as if he had opened a door, showing his children a kingdom of ancient trees. One was as large as a prairie silo. An emerald variety of wild mosses and ferns grew over its roots and trunk. Oh, said Sally softly, it's not a nobleman, it's a king. It has orange spray on it, said Borden. Doesn't that mean it's going to be cut down? My boss marked it several years ago. He told me to cut it. But you didn't, Borden said. Did the judge's order save it? Sally asked. No, Leon said, patting the tree. We clear cut over there. He pointed to the empty mountainside. But when I saw this tree, I told my boss I couldn't cut it. You couldn't? Sally and Borden said simultaneously, delight and pride in their voices. Here's the nobleman, and you can see, give me one sec, kids who are alive, you'll get to see it in a sec. You can see in the corner Leon and Borden and Sally, how tiny they are. Just shows you how it's such a big tree. There they are. It's like as close as I can get. You couldn't? Sally and Borden said simultaneously, delight and pride in their voices. No, said Leon. Look at it. I couldn't lay it down without knocking down those 3 big incense cedars and that prime western hemlock. I wouldn't do that. That's not my style. Oh, Borden said. Leon looked up through the gracefully whorled branches to the flattened needles with their bright green undersides. A real nobleman, he said. Stumped me all right. It's a great tree. He slapped its mossy trunk and laughed. You like old trees? Borden was now quite perplexed. I love old trees, Leon said. They challenge me. This old fellow has been working 800 years to get the better of me. Look what it did. It grew up on steep hillsides that I can barely climb. Then it let a grove of cedars surround it, and bushes and windfall. I walked around it 40 times, but couldn't figure out how to drop it without killing myself and wiping out the grove. Quite a dilemma. But it did do something nice for me. He walked into a space between 2 huge buttresses. Here's where I ate my lunch out of the rain. Sally and Borden crept into the shelter with him and looked out at the shafts of silver sunlight spearing down through the mist. A junco sang, a winter wren caroled, and a brown creeper chattered as it ran up, then down, the great king. Let's bring the vice president here, Borden said. He'd like to see this tree, I'll bet. Well, if we did, I'd tell him this, Leon said. I can cut it for you. I'll take out that nice, straight, 75-year-old Douglas fir over there, he pointed out, and I'll take out the giant western hemlock right here. I can drop both of them without hitting any other tree. The 2 would bring a nice profit, and they would let in the sun. I'd plant Douglas firs in that sun. They need lots of sunshine when they're young. And then I'd stop cutting for 25 years. I'd leave the noblemen for campers and picnickers. This is is a pretty place. Pop, I didn't know you knew anything about forestry, Sally said. Leon smiled. You can't be a cutter all your life and not know something about the way that forests work. Come on, I'll show you something else. This is the way a stream should be, Leon said. Not like that muddy rut at the bottom of the clear-cut mountain where we got Barty's perch. Did clear-cutting really ruin the river like that? Sure did. Gosh, Pop, Borden said. Your work put Jimmy Olden's Pop out of work. He's a fisherman and there are no more salmon coming up the streams around here anymore. Yeah, Leon said. It's like a big game of dominoes. Who will fall next? The canneries, said Borden. Then the tin can makers. Then the truckers. Then the merchants. Then the banks. Then the people who eat fish, said Leon. Then the babies who need vitamin D from fish. So let's get back to the trees and just start over. Borden waded into the icy stream and turned over a rock. He caught a crayfish, looked at it, and put it back. Sally found a frog. They climbed back to the arbutus garden in the summer twilight. Barty was gone. Oh, cried Sally. I miss him. Leon and Borden looked at the empty perch and hurried to the logging road. At the truck, Leon leaned down and picked up an owl's pellet. He looked up. Hi, Barty, he said. Sally ran across the road. There are two of them, she said. She was pointing to a shadowy owl shape a few feet above Barty. But it's not a spotted owl, said Leon. It's red. Yeah, it is, Borden said with great disappointment. He wanted Barty to be with his family. Let's go, Leon said, but no one moved. All three stood quietly, watching their wonderful friend. A puff of red dust appeared above Barty. Then a second and a third cloud arose, and where the red owl had been sat Enrique. His spots shone like stars in the twilight. Well, I'll be danged, Leon said. It's Barty's Pop, Enrique, the cutter's owl. Hey, Barty, Borden called. You better bring your dusty old Pop to the house for a shower. But there won't be any mice, Leon called to him. I've got a job. Starts Tuesday. The fish hatchery needs a good man this season. Borden and Sally stared at him. When that's done, who knows? Maybe I'll even see if I can get a job showing those environmentalists where to find the last fish in the clean streams up here. And, he glanced at Barty, spotted owls. If they're going to save them, they'd better know where they are. He grinned. I can tell those environmentalists a lot about these forests and save them a lot of legwork. What about the judge? Borden asked. How can you go to work on Tuesday? That's the day of the hearing. Oh, that, said Leon. I mailed him a money order on the way up here. I paid the fine. I've got better things to do than to argue with a judge. Barty heard Pop's voice and flew to a low branch. He fluttered his wings and called for food. Leon looked up, swallowed the lump that was rising in his throat, and quickly opened the truck door. Barty crouched to fly to him, but Leon disappeared inside the truck. As they drove away, Borden watched Barty for as long as he could through the rear window. When he could no longer hear the noise of the truck, Enrique dropped to his side, a flying squirrel in his beak. Barty sidled over to him. He stared intently at his father's face. It matched that face of long ago when he was fed by his father instead of his mother. He had been very young then, and the round disc and those two caring eyes were permanently imprinted on his memory. He fluttered his wings, and his father fed him. Barty was home. Night came to the old-growth forest. Barty dozed. Enrique flew to the Douglas fir and called to his mate. He called again, then over and over and over. But no owl answered him. There's the last picture. The last picture of the book There's Barty or Enrique flying out over the forest. That's the end, 4th grade. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to discuss the book live. If you watched the video, thank you for tuning in. We kind of talked a lot about how Leon's character changed. Lots of big changes happened at the very end of the story. This ending, the climax, kind of happened right at the end of the book, and then the ending, the resolution, was that last chapter. So thanks for tuning in on the videos, and kids who are live, we'll discuss it in just a minute. Thanks, everybody.